The mind reacts the same way to fear in the absence of stored factual knowledge in the rational side of the brain. And this proves that fear and ignorance go hand in hand. They shake hands, they walk together, they're buddies. Fear and ignorance are together, they're buddies.
It's like peanut butter and jelly.
Peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Frank and Angie's channel, where we discuss the retire early lifestyle, whether it's at home or abroad. Thanks for coming to our channel. And it's a serious matter, but we'll get to that in just a second. Please be patient and stay with the video and you'll be rewarded. So, what was I going to talk about? I needed the coffee.
Gracias.
You know, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and when we're vocalizing that picture, sometimes we can be super short and miss out on a lot of the beauty of the complete picture, and we miss out on a lot of the meaning. And so it's valuable to refer to this over here so that we can get an understanding of this over here as an example. So if you'll bear with me. All right, so there are reports, I've been reading some reports of some studies that have been done that show the way that we react and think is with two sides of our brain. And so there's the emotional side of our brain, our mind, and then there's the rational thinking, slow, methodical thinking part of our brain. The other one's quick, emotional, reactionary, the first one, and then the second one is more methodical, more rational, more thinking, more factual. Okay, so what happens is that in, say for example, when we go to the zoo and there's a big bear behind the bars and the glass, well, our knowledge base, our storage and knowledge base that we have, we already understand that the bear is behind the glass and the bars and everything. And our rational thinking mind doesn't have to work too hard because that information is already stored. We already know that it does not present a danger. And therefore, there's no room for the emotional, quick, fear-based response to take over because our rational mind is overpowering with enough knowledge to say, well, no, this is not a problem. However, if we were walking in the woods and that same bear showed up, most of us wouldn't have any knowledge stored in our thinking and rational side that would overpower our emotional side, which would clearly present to us that there's a danger, and therefore our quick, emotional, fear-based response would be, we're in danger, and we would react accordingly. We would think fight or flight, and we would, react according to the danger. So those are two different sides. Now, keep that in mind as we talk about this other thing. I've mentioned the Salem witch trials. Now, if this kind of a conversation, sometimes people don't, how do I say this? There was a period of time in history when certain groups gave in to their non-rational thinking, and to its extreme, what it led to is a sort of justified societal culture, societal justification for, well, nowadays we would call it murder. But back then they thought it was justice. And so there are times when murder appears to be justice. What happened is that at this particular historical point in time, it was within religious societies. Now, if you don't want to hear about religious groups, you can skip a few minutes forward, but I recommend that you stick with it because it's not about the religion. The point is that if religious groups, if those that purport to have a base and a foundation and a trust in a higher power can fall prey to superstitious thinking, it's not just superstition, it's superstition to the level that it leads to the fear-based mind overpowering the rational, thinking, factual mind to such an extent that so-called justice is served that is a cover for murder. 300 years later, all of those people in the Salem witch trials, all of those about 20 people that were hung for being accused of being full of spirits or witches or whatever it is that they said, they were all exonerated. 300, it makes no difference to them, they were murdered. But 300 years later, you know, we have enough rational thinking mind available now, and we have enough facts to understand that that was a reaction not based on facts and thinking, but rather fear. And it had a color of law to it. Okay, so it started with somebody putting out an idea within the groups, and the idea was that, and this is not about religious argument, I just want to explain to you how this came about. Focus on this part. It started out with the idea that it was a fact that people had demons in them in the here and now, and therefore they were satanic. And therefore that idea, it was first established into people's minds by somebody in authority, okay? And so the first phase was to accept that, and if you didn't accept that, then you didn't believe in God. Remember, these were religious groups, so you couldn't be somebody that didn't believe, because then you were going to be kicked out of the group. So if you had to be part of this religious group, and if you had to accept that there was a God and you believed in God, then you also were led to believe that you had to believe that there was demons within people in the here and now. And I'm not saying there aren't, just follow me on this. But that, okay, so that was the first thing. So first people accepted that. And then after they accepted that, the next step that came about was, well, if they're demon infested, therefore they're sinful, they're satanic, therefore they are guilty of crime, and therefore they must be executed. And that's exactly what happened. And the short details are that most of the ones that were executed were young women. They were young women. I mean, that takes a little bit of thinking. It's not much of a stretch to believe that if there were jealousies or other issues going on, that people's anger could be aroused and people could be accused of witchcraft over it. And they weren't all women, but 80% of them, which is the majority, were women. And then they would, you know, anger would lead to them being accused and then to be executed. This was 300 years ago, which was way before the Constitution was enacted, in order to protect people from this kind of folly from their own cultures and from their own neighbors and from their own families, okay? So it was like almost 100 years before the U.S. Constitution was enacted. And I see the wisdom in a Constitution like the U.S. Constitution now, because, you know, you're innocent until proven guilty. But you really didn't need that Constitution. If you were reading the scripture, Jesus never executed anyone for being, you know, full of demons or something. He always called the demons out, you know, so, or he ran from them. So he said, get thee hence, you know, and get out of here. So I said all that to say that there was a invisible enemy. There was first indoctrinated an invisible enemy within the people's minds, whether it's demons or a virus or a ghost or whatever you want to call it. You can call it whatever you want, but it's an invisible enemy. And people don't act right when they are infected with this invisible enemy. And so then if you first accept that there is this invisible enemy, and remember that the reports that I started this video with about thinking with our rational side or our fear side, when we think with our fear side, it doesn't necessarily have to do with the fact that there is an obvious, real danger. In the case of the Salem witch trials, there was a danger that was created in the minds of the people. However, people reacted the same way. The mind reacts the same way to fear in the absence of stored factual knowledge in the rational side of the brain. Okay? So, we putting two and two together here? So it's not much of a stretch that the more you push this fear, it's like telling people within the space of 2 hours 21 times to do this, do this, do this, to protect, to stay safe, do this, do this. It just establishes in the mind a fear reaction. You must stay in fear. You must be in fear. And when the mind focuses on fear, we react with fear in the absence of knowledge. All right, so when we're out here interacting, because these people in these Salem communities, apparently there was not any knowledge. But the knowledge was right there in front of them if they would have just looked for it. The knowledge was right there in the good book if they would have just, and it makes you wonder, right? But if a religious group like that can fall prey to this kind of mind manipulation, how much more so people that aren't? And some people may say, well, they would fall for it more because they're religious. And I would venture to agree with that, except for I'm seeing the same thing within non-religious parts of society. I'm seeing the very same thing. Matter of fact, I'm seeing more so. I'll show you a comment somebody made. This lady said, you know why they're putting all these restrictions, and this was here in Ecuador, but this is happening all over the world. You know why they're putting all these restrictions? 5 million people died in Loja just yesterday afternoon. And that's just in the afternoon. In the morning, even more people died. I mean,
your face.
Do you see what I'm saying here? Where does this come from? And the parroting of people take information they see and hear here and there, in the news, in the newspaper, on TV. It doesn't matter where it's come from, their family, it doesn't matter, from their neighbor, from the guy on the street that yells at you, says put your mask on, wherever it's coming from, it just feeds. Because if it was based on the rational, the factual, nobody would say 5 million people died in Loja just in the afternoon, because there's only 181,000 people in Loja. Never could be 5 million people dying just in the afternoon, and even more in the morning. It couldn't happen. And then there's other people saying the hospitals are all full, the ICUs are all, and these are expats. I'm not asking people to believe anything that I say. I'm just making an illustration here to help you think about how your thinking processes fall prey. And it's happened before. The Salem witch trials, 300 years later, all the people that were hung were exonerated. Is that what we want to do? Do we want to start hanging people for not wearing a mask or not getting? Do we want to start starving people, not allowing them to go into the stores without a certificate? Do we want to start starving and killing people, and 300 years from now say, you know what, that was wrong, they were murdered? Because you didn't refer to the rational, the factual, the slow thinking. You deferred, in the absence of that, to the fear. Because when we defer to the fear, our focus is fear, personal experience. And this proves that fear and ignorance go hand in hand. They shake hands, they walk together, they're buddies. Fear and ignorance are together, they're buddies.
It's like peanut butter and jelly.
Peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It happened to us. I'm not trying to sound like the guy that, is immune to all of it. I always have been a very inquisitive type person. But even so, when I moved abroad, because of the absence of real information, because you had to do your own research because nobody was really telling you, we figured out later, a little bit too late, that you really kind of have to do your own research. And you kind of really have to dig deep on your own. Seek and you shall find. You may not find it where you think it is. You may have to go somewhere else to look for it. And so when we moved abroad, we knew nothing about endemic areas. We didn't even know that the majority of the earth is endemic. So we knew nothing about it. We moved right in the middle of it, and we fell prey to our own ignorance. And what did we do? When there's no stored body of knowledge within your rational thinking mind, what do you default to? Fear. And that's exactly what we did. We panicked. Okay, we kept getting infected with parasites over and over and over. We feared literally our focus. Remember, when you're in fear, you automatically focus on the worst possible outcome, and that was death by parasites. It's going to go to the brain. It's going to go to the liver. You're going to die. And so what did we do? We did something we would have, and this is important, we did something we would have never, ever done, because it wasn't part of our history, it wasn't part of our MO, it wasn't part of our lifestyle. We never deferred to antibiotics, we never used hospitals or clinics. We've been naturalists all our lives. But in the absence of real knowledge about this subject, right, we caved into fear, made a bad decision, took some super antibiotics, which are not the normal ones. They're not the ones people think, well, we took antibiotics for a cold and nothing. It's not those. These are brand new super antibiotics designed for these parasites. And we've been suffering for 4 years from it. We're getting better now. But just to say, we've been through this very same thing we're talking about in this video. So we have first-hand experience what it's like to make decisions based on ignorance. You get to a point where you're thrown into this new situation that you don't have the tools for, and you weren't ready for it. And so there's a certain amount of panic going on, you know. So, and that's why we did the antibiotics. But there are guidelines. You can't take. It's so strong it kills everything in your body. And I said in another video, it has made me sick just from killing all my good flora. This is something, guys, this is something we have not had to do. We have not gone through this kind of a problem. I haven't taken antibiotics in 35 years. Anyhow, we're in the process of changing how we do things. And, for us, it was an emergency thing stemming from the lack of knowledge of being in an endemic area, which is a situation we haven't been in before. But now we're learning, we're getting smarter, we're getting better, and we're going to be taking care of this thing in a natural way. And it was a mistake. In the past, every time I've ever made a decision based on fear, which was always spearheaded by ignorance, it's always been the wrong decision. So with that, I hope I can inspire you to think for yourself, seek and ye shall find, and the truth will set you free. Thanks for coming to our channel, and have a wonderful day.